Today we're going to be installing a Hydro Assist steering kit on this first gen 4Runner. Welcome to Snail Trail 4x4. I'm Jimmy Jett, and if you like building Toyotas and going off-roading, then this is the channel for you. Hit that subscribe button down below. Today we're going to be installing a Hydro Assist steering kit from Trail Gear. We actually went out and bought the box, so it's already plumbed and tapped and everything for us. And the benefit of having a Hydro Assist is that the pump underneath in the engine bay is already set up to be able to push these things. And so what they do is they tap the box. We run additional lines down to a hydraulic ram that's down on your axle, and that's attached to your tie rod. Tie rod bar? Yeah, the tie rod. And that now when you steer, it's still a mechanical connection through the steering down to your power steering box, but now in the power steering box it is pushing the fluids down to the ram and now pushing that ram one way or the other, pushing or pulling for your steering. So it makes everything so much easier when you're running massive tires. When we pulled the old steering box out, we actually took some of the lines with it. So our first step here is we're actually going to replace these two lines with the old lines that we have. So one on the underside down here, and then one on this section right here, and that's where the plumb lines go in for the Hydro Assist. This shorter one went up here, and then the longer one went down here, and these were 17 millimeters. Ooh. Hit the camera. All right, now that we've got the lines in here, we've got the fittings in for the additional power steering line or the Hydro Assist lines. We're now going to find center on the shaft here, the sector shaft. And to do that, we just have a 16-inch or a 16 millimeter wrench on here, and we're at one end of the power steering box. So I'm going to turn it and find out how many revolutions it takes. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and okay, so it's like 4 and a little over 3/4. So that means we need to go back 2 and then about halfway back. So let's see, 1, 2, and somewhere about halfway should be here. So let's double check that, see about 2, and see if we end out right about in that area. 1, oops, and 2, and then yep, back to there. So this is about halfway, so we need to go back our 1, 2, and a little bit more. So that is halfway on the power steering box. So now we can put the pitman arm back on. All right, so just straight up and down here. And we're just gonna slide it up as much as we can. And then they provided a lock washer and then the nut, and we'll just put those on, and then we'll crank this down pretty much as tight as we can and suck that up as far as we can. All right, now now that we've got everything all wired up, we're actually gonna bring this box back up into place. Here's the hard wire that goes this way. Here's the box. Want to rotate that one all the way around to over here, or all the way that you can. Does it stop right there?
Yeah, it stops on that screw.
All right, let's leave it be then. There we go. Up it is. Cool. Tyler's putting on the anti-seize onto those bolts right now so that if we ever need to in the future, we can pull off the bolts. It was turning on also. Ready? All right. Power steering box is back in place. So this is the bracket that we're going to use, that we're going to weld on top of the differential here. What you do is this end here, which is the small curve, actually goes back all the way around the top of the diff till you hit the vent, and then where the welding part is for the vent. So it's going to go sit somewhere right along those lines. Let's see, right about there is where it's going to sit. Whoops. So what we need to do is we need to grind down all the paint and bring it down to bare metal so then we can weld it in place. Because Tyler's diff is probably misshaped, or because the bracket isn't exactly matching up to the diff, we ground down a chunk of the bracket so that we can get a better alignment along the diff for when we weld it up. Ow! Went down my pants! My shorts. Okay, so a few things, few big updates since you saw me weld on this bracket here. We've now attached the rod to the bracket. We have plumbed the lines up to that by pretty much routing them both around this direction and then coming back to the pump or the ram because those lines are so long. The one popping off of the front of the pump is coming out this way and going to be spinning around. We're probably going to try and pull that in as much as we can, like that, so that the tire is not going to rub on it. And then the other one that comes off of the top comes back here by the alternator and then comes down and onto the other underside. We'll probably zip tie those to this, the bar here, the drag link, and to keep those controlled and out of the way. On the top, we've plumbed everything back up. Here's the new line right here that shoots out back by the alternator. We put this guy back in, and we've put this guy all the way back right here and back into the block. Now we're going to connect the steering back together, and then we're going to add fluid in, and we are going to try and get as many and all the air bubbles out of the system as we can. All right, so we're all done. We've got everything plumbed up, and this is the layout. We were able to tie down a few of the hydraulic lines to the tie rod and the drag link. There we go. We're super happy with this install. This took us a really long time, and probably the biggest majority time sucker for the most part was just bleeding the system, and that takes a lot of time. You got to have a ton of patience. We probably spent about half an hour or so bleeding the system with the engine off, and then another additional 15-20 minutes bleeding the system with the engine on. One of the major tricks that we did was when we were bleeding the system at the beginning, we disconnected one of the lines down at the bottom at the ram, and we went lock to lock a bunch of times till fluid came out of that. Then we connected everything back up, connected the ram to the tie rod, and then went lock to lock until there were no more bubbles coming out of the system. Then we started the motor up and then continued to do lock to lock until the reservoir settled down, stopped sucking fluid down into the system, and leveled out with no more bubbles coming through. And that took a ton of time, so just be extremely patient with that. Besides that, if you have any additional questions, put them down in the comments, hammer down on that subscribe button, and don't forget, keep crawling. That was better.